What's up, you filthy casuals? Welcome to the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast, a podcast all about the irreverent love of gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremiah, and tonight I am joined by Dave,
who still hears the old podcast slogan in his head every single podcast. It's just ingrained in there. What's up, guys?
Actually, I'm not even sure I could do it off the cuff.
Really?
I'm not sure I could do it.
I think just because I heard it for so long, I like finish the sentence in my head, and then you just go a different direction, and it throws me off every week.
I'm so sorry. We're also joined by Joel.
Hey, friends.
And we're joined by Mark.
Heyo!
You might know Mark from all of the GTA videos or from Rocket League, but he does different voices in all of them, so you may not recognize him at all. But he's here to talk about Dark Souls 3, as are we all, because this week we are reviewing Dark Souls 3 and what we think about it. That's why James is sitting out. He has not bought the game yet. He still plans on getting it, but he's just been playing other stuff, so he's sat out this week.
He's at home eating apple chips right now. Just bag
weird.
after bag of apple chips.
Keeping me up
very
till
specific.
3 in the morning watching various Shreds videos on YouTube.
Really? So what's going on there?
I wanted to sleep the other night, and he kept sending Shreds videos from like every single artist.
What are Shreds?
Never seen
shredding
these?
on the guitar. Gotcha. Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking like people working out shredding. Like,
I
shredded.
wish.
I was like, why is he saying like just?
I could have stayed up for that.
Wow.
So anyway, I don't think we have any announcements, so we're just gonna hop straight into it. Dark Souls 3. It has been out for about a week and 2 days. By the time you hear this on Monday, it will have been out for almost 2 weeks. So,
yep.
As of right now, though, on Thursday, when we're recording this, actually, I will go ahead and plug that. We record the podcast live Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Casual Shenanigans YouTube channel. So if you want to watch us record it live, come out, hang out there, interact with the chat, send us questions, stuff like that. But it has been out for about a week and 2 days. How far is everybody into it?
I am 30 something hours, like 33 hours.
33 hours. How percentage-wise, how far do you think you are?
Honestly, with the Dark Souls games, I really don't know. Like, I think I'd say I'm like maybe like 60%.
Okay. Dave?
But I really don't know.
4.7 hours. I'm slacking off. I'm going so slow. I picked a thief as my class, and so of those 4.5 hours, I'd say like 70% is not actually fighting things, it's creeping around things sneakily.
Dave trying to be immersive.
And then Mark, you've beat the game. How many hours did it take you?
It's hard to say because part of it was helping you, part of it was like just doing invasions and stuff. I think I'm about 35 hours deep though, so
okay.
It probably took me like 27, 28 hours to actually beat it.
Man, dude, you like flew through that game.
No, I ran like everyone else.
I'm 14 hours in, although about 6 of that was the potato masher video, so I guess I'm only like 8 hours in. How far would you say I am percentage-wise, Mark? Am I like a third?
Yeah, about a third.
Okay, cool. All right, so we've played quite a bit. I guess we're approaching like 100 hours, maybe close to 100 hours for the group. But we're going to talk about a couple different topics. Unlike the Division video, we're not super rushed for time, so we can actually explore things a little more tonight. But let's start with the world and the story of Dark Souls, which is something I admittedly know absolutely nothing about because it does not interest me. Joel and Mark, I'm guessing.
No. This is Joel. I don't know anything about the story either.
All right, Joel. Well, the story and the world. What do you think about this, especially related to previous Dark Souls games? How's the story in this one?
Well, before I even do this, can I just talk about the anticipation for Dark Souls 3 and then actually playing Dark Souls 3 at midnight?
All right, yes. Take us through.
Oh, it was a glorified moment. Okay, so Joy's parents were actually over that night for her birthday, and they were spending the night, and it was so awkward because I was like, so I'm playing a game at midnight, and it was just like really awkward to like, because their parents are not really into games. Like they play Tetris maybe, you know? And they're like, can you guys, so we put a bed up upstairs. So we put a bed up upstairs. So I'm like downstairs trying to be quiet. And then John is just sending me all these messages on PS4, like right in front of them. I'm like trying to close them. I'm like, I can't. I'm like, Joy's parents are here. And then I was just like, wait, I was like, are they going to go upstairs now? I'm like, it's 2 hours before the game unlocks. I was like double checking all my controllers to make sure they're charged. I was so excited. like had the whole day planned. I was off the next day. I had some Seagrams. Oh yeah. I had some craisins. I had some peanuts. I had some.
How many
granola
flavors
bars.
of Doritos did you have on hand? Like, how many delicious Doritos flavors were at your side for Dark Souls?
Oh, many flavors. And then halfway through the day, I needed to get a charge with my controller, so I did a quick stop to GameStop.
We're not this week, guys. Not this week, please.
Come on, I can do that forever. All right. Yeah. So, anyways, it was really fun. It was me, Dave, and John jumping on, and we all created our characters at the same time. And we were just.
And that's the last time you ever saw Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause Joel for just 1 second. John and Joel spent maybe like 7 minutes in the character creator giggling furiously and Skyping each other images of the character creation screen before they're like, shut up, intro movie, go, intro movie now. Oh man. In the meantime, I'm like looking up like Witcher lore to create my Archer character. I spent easily 20 minutes getting like the cheekbones right. I based her off of a Gwent card, Joel, based off her character. But I was like, you guys have already left me behind before the intro even plays. Like, oh well. At least I'm here to be part of the chat.
All right. Well, anyways, going into the world and story. Mm-hmm. Still trying to figure out exactly what's going on, but I'm loving all the hints and like the lore on. Like, it's something that that appeals to me with these games is that it is not a linear story. It's not like, oh, of course you go over here and you're going to get the backstory for this character. That backstory of the character might be on a sword in a graveyard somewhere else that he fought at, eons beforehand, and then some ancient scribe or someone brought the sword over to this church. But I like finding out little tidbits, and it's really fun because as I play with my friends, and specifically John, we, the different ways we play, he might miss a chest, he might miss an item, he might not figure something out that I figure out, and vice versa. So for me, it's such a fun way to play a game going, like we'll get on one night and John will be like, hey dude, I think I found something. Dude, read the item with the such and such a ring. And I was like, oh crap, that's connecting to this area. That's really neat. Like the deep, like actual narrative, I don't fully understand other than the fact that the world kind of keeps renewing, that these, people come and fight, and then like has to do with fire, and then it gets consumed and it starts it over again, and there's just like a cycle and stuff, and it's just kind of a nightmare. But
you like the comparing notes part.
I like figuring out tidbits when you get a ring and it says, the such and such worshippers of blah blah blah, went over to this cathedral, and they, and you're like looking up at the ceiling and looking at the statues, and they all have spikes, and you're like, why do they all have spikes? But then later on you'll see some other ring or some item or or some kind of like cutscene, and it like connects to that, and you might get just a tiny more hint about what that was. You're like, oh, I never noticed that. I just feel like it's a game that keeps on giving in a way for story. Like every time I play it, there's something new I didn't notice or I didn't see. So instead of replaying a quick single player game where a story like Call of Duty or whatever, or even just a good single player game, you play it once and there's not too much you get out of it again. Where with Dark Souls, there is so much you can miss and you can get over and over again by keep playing or trying different methods or using different weapons and stuff. So the world as a gameplay environment, it is very much like a mixture between Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne, I would say.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot of 1, but I felt a lot of Bloodborne influences. It has
massive, gigantic environments, and they are really connecting within those areas. So it's like, it'd be like going into Blighttown in Dark Souls 1, and then you connect within the 3 or 4 areas connected to it. But then when you want to get back to kind of a main area, you can kind of warp and stuff. And it's very good. I still love Dark Souls 1 a little bit better. And it's hard, it's hard to not be biased because that was the very first time I played a Dark Souls game. So my experience of not understanding the game mechanics and learning it and being surprised is way more than all the rest of the games, just because I'm now a more avid Dark Souls gamer. So I can kind of see what's going to happen next. The same way if you've played all the Zelda games, you're going to go to a water temple. You're going to probably go here. So you can kind of expect some of the challenges. But with that being said, like, all the areas are just super surprising. And me and John, we both got to an area. There's a bridge, and it's just the overlook is just phenomenal. I was like not expecting just, whoa, holy crap. Like this is awesome. Just around every single corner, the bosses are awesome and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm loving the world and really enjoying the story so far. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen towards the end, but there's a lot of hints.
Mark, what do you think about the world, especially in relation to the previous games?
I think it's really sweet. It's definitely my second favorite From Software game, I think. Yeah, it doesn't quite interconnect on the same level that Dark Souls 1 did. Like, the shortcuts in that game were, like, mind-blowing to me. This definitely has more of the Dark Souls 2. You warp, I mean, even from the get-go, you warp to, like, the first level. And that's still cool. Like, there's still lots of, like, sweet shortcuts and everything. It's usually, like, a elevator or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Dark Souls 1, like, it was just, like, you'd open up a door and all of a sudden you were back in this one area and you're like, oh, crap. And this really makes sense how it connects. It's not quite on that level, but the environments, especially, and we're at the part in the game, Jeremiah, where I think pretty much every area after the one that we're in now, including the one we're in now, is really awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, some of my favorite from the entire series. Like, it's kind of front-loaded with the worst areas, and they're still pretty cool, but the back half of the game has some really awesome environments, and, like, just really visually, like, some of the coolest I've seen in this series. But yeah, like Joel said, it's not quite like Dark Souls 1, where you first are learning the mechanics and how everything works, and your first exposure to a world like this. I mean, I kind of, like I've said before, know all of From's tricks at this point. So
yeah, like there are some that are obviously like, okay, that was awesome, but it sucks because if when you read online, you see other people's experiences playing, Bloodborne first or Dark Souls 2 or 3. Those are their favorite games. And so they don't really like Dark Souls 1 as much as those. And I can understand that, because it's like, once you kind of get the idea of, okay, oh, let me walk over this bridge that's over a cliff of spikes. Gee, like, it's totally not going to break, Like, once you get that this game is going to have stuff like that, and now I've played hundreds of hours of these games, you start seeing some of those. But I'm still amazed that they still have things that are tricking me, Like, I may not know every bit of the lore like some of the, the masters that play Dark Souls and they figure everything out. But I'm pretty good at figuring out some of the tricks of, like, all right, there's going to be a monster in there. That soul, right. You're like, oh, it's in the middle of the room. Gee, I wonder. And It's awesome. I'm like, okay, it's going to drop from the ceiling. You're like looking around and like, oh, there's nothing there. And then, like, somehow you didn't notice, like, a mob of people behind you, and you're like, yes, it got me, And so for me, I'm excited about that, because it's like,
punish me, Dark Souls, punish me.
There just aren't games like that anymore. There really aren't. Like, you play first-person shooters, you know what's going to happen every single time. So, and I think the connecting worlds from Dark Souls 1 was both awesome and also a pain, because when I first played it, I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to trek through this area again, But I definitely learned to appreciate it more towards the end, because it was like, once you unlocked everything and you're leveled up, you just felt like a badass going through those areas. You got to see things again, and you'd re-explore areas where Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, if you forgot an item and you warp back and let's say you go to another area, it might be hours or ages until you figure out, oh yeah, I should probably go back to that one area and re-explore it again, because you don't have to forcefully walk through that zone again. You bypass it. So I think the need to go back to older areas is not as, as cool as it was before, but this one's very close, I'd say.
So now combat and gameplay. So I'll say this is the first, like, when I played Dark Souls 2, that was the first Souls game I'd really played. I tried Dark Souls 1, but, like, the PC version was garbage, and Games for Windows Live didn't really work. So I played like an hour. I hit the one part with the skeletons and the gravestones where everybody hits, because they went the wrong way. I went the wrong way. And that's when I stopped. I never played any more of it. So Dark Souls 2 was the first one I really got into. And as everyone knows, I was very, very bad at it and spent, like, hours dying in the first section. But after,
you wanna pimp out that Let's Play?
The I suck at
It's
Dark
hot
Souls
now.
2 Let's Play. Yeah, if you want to watch me and Mark. Mark doesn't struggle. Mark laughs at my struggles. And
I think I fuck up more than you.
Well, because you're not taking it seriously, because you're doing fine. So you're like, yeah, I'll do the wizard build, and then halfway through you're like, yeah, this is a horrible idea.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until like 7/8 of the way through the game where you were like, well, does your shield block 100% damage? And I was like, That's a thing. And
You sure like fat rolling, don't you, buddy?
Dude, Edgar played 50 hours of Bloodborne, and then I was like, dude, why are you rolling everywhere? I was like, you can run. And he's like, what? He didn't know he could run. He rolls everywhere. So like through the swamp, through the forest, everywhere. I'm like, dude, stop freaking rolling.
Yeah, this is the first one I was going into where I felt like I was pretty prepared for it.
Talk about your experience playing Bloodborne. How did that go?
Not well. I quit Bloodborne. For a variety.
Would you ever
of
see
issues.
yourself going back to it after playing something like this?
I've thought about it. I think I could.
I'm just wondering.
Depending on how this goes, I think we'll talk about that more when we get to like the difficulty thing. I think I could be more easily persuaded into it now.
I think Bloodborne is the toughest of the entire
I
series,
do definitely
if you're
think
including it.
Yeah.
I think Bloodborne has one of the toughest starts, I think. Because you just can't level up or do anything. Where a lot of the other Dark Souls games, you can at least level up, and then even if you get crushed by the first boss, you can come back like Dave did and just grind it away, at least destroyed him. But with Bloodborne, like you either just have to just go at it skill based and the first boss, or or go to the second boss, which is also effing hard.
The DLC
first boss
though.
in Bloodborne. Oh, the DLC, yeah. But for that first boss, I couldn't get the timing down because Bloodborne was so different from Dark Souls 2 that I basically harvested that first like couple of streets in Bloodborne like 30 times
Same
to level
here.
up.
Yeah.
And that's how I beat the first boss, and that was a bit of a sour taste. But then the environment was the main thing that kept me going, and then it really just clicked. I got the timing down. But going into Dark Souls 3, coming right off the back of Bloodborne, it's really hard for me to use my shield. Like I'm so used to dodging and rolling everything. I need to get some more practice in just for the combat to get the timing back, because Bloodborne broke me.
Well, so for the combat, I feel really good this time because I'm no longer playing at Bloodborne frame rates. Which when it launched, when I did most of my Bloodborne playing, the frame rate was really bad. I mean, the game looked great, but it was especially when you tried to like co-op with people. There was a few times where like 3 of us were playing together, and I swear the frame rate was at 20. If we were lucky, it was at 20. Like it was like
It was
watching
a smooth
slideshow.
19, Jeremiah. Close enough.
Exactly.
I've
So
seen
You're
this
one of those
20 many
guys who
times.
insists on seeing The Hobbit in 48 frames per second, Jeremiah. Don't you appreciate the cinematic quality?
So I'm playing Dark Souls 3 at 45 FPS. I cannot play it at 60 at 4K. But I'm playing it at 45, and it's a huge jump. I mean, that's a 50% bump over what the PS4 is playing at. And to me, it makes a big difference, and the game feels so much faster. And actually, to me, feels faster than Bloodborne. I know it technically isn't, but the input lag is so much less. It's very, very noticeable. And it just feels really, really polished for me because of that. And I feel like that might be why I'm having a little bit of an easier time at the beginning. And also, like Mark said, I don't think the beginning is nearly as hard as Bloodborne. But gameplay wise, now that I know how to start the game, like I've got a shield that blocks 100% at the very beginning, even though my stamina is nothing. I'm liking the gameplay actually, probably the best out of anything in the series so far.
Shit.
Any specific gameplay moments so far that you've had that you're like, oh, that was fun. That was really fun.
Well, before I say that, I still unfortunately get the same feeling as in Dark Souls 2, where you can use other weapons you find if you think they're cool, but I kind of like in most RPGs, The Witcher, Skyrim, stuff like that, you find some super rare item that's like super powerful and it feels so cool.
Yeah.
In Dark Souls, they don't really feel like any of them are much more powerful. They might be slightly more suited to your style, but they don't feel massively different until you upgrade them. So as a result, I'm using the second sword I found, the broadsword. I'm still using that because I can level up other stuff, but my broadsword is still better. So I still don't feel like I'm being pushed towards trying new shields and new weapons and things. It feels like it's too easy to just play the game with what you start out
it's
with.
definitely your play style, but if you like, for me, like what's fun is you should try getting a larger weapon, or like maybe even like a spear, like a long spear.
I've got the butcher knife. I've got a very long curved scimitar I'm using. Like I've got some big ones.
You earn so much titanite in this game that you really can level up everything. And don't forget, like I don't know if you've gotten to the point where you can infuse weapons now with like like with magic stuff. Like try on some that you're like, I don't know if I'll like it. Just try infusing a weapon on that titanite and leveled up, because what's fun is Mark, and I don't know if you're helping Jeremiah with this too, with some of the extra mechanics you can do while fighting. Like you can roll forward, hit attack, which does a lunge. You can just do a quick dodge back and then do a quick attack forward. There's so many different ways to do it that all the different weapons have so many different combinations that it's really helpful. If you're in a mob with tons of skeletons, whip out the big thing. And just
skull fuck them.
So anyway, back to Joel's thing about are there any gameplay moments that I thought were really cool?
Wait, but before you do that, Joel, what do you think about the weapon arts? Do you use those much?
I use them all the time. Have you guys gotten the shield that allows you to do the weapon arts without having to press triangle to like do banded yet?
What is a weapon art?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Dave, if you press the triangle button or whatever, like to do a two-handed with a weapon, right?
Okay.
Once you do that, if you do the left trigger, it puts your character in kind of like a I don't know, looks like you're getting ready to attack someone, right? Like a defensive
high ready position.
Yeah, high ready position. And then the right top buttons and right triggers, they do different powerful attacks. So one with a big sword, you can break open a shield from some bad guy or like another enemy, and then you can do the riposte like right in front of them. So on the front side, you can like stab them right to the face or whatever. It works really well. Like, I mean, if you're gonna do any PvP or fight against any bosses, that's awesome. Like, because they don't, a lot of times they don't expect it. So like they each have different ones. Like the rapier has like one where you just literally like just do a quick like dash attack. They're awesome. Like you really you got to kind of mess around with the different weapons you have to try to see what they do, because some work really well for certain bosses. Like ones like let's say you're fighting against a giant or something like that, and you have to keep your camera unlocked. With a tiny broadsword, you might miss some swipes because it's kind of small. You have to be really close. Well, use a bigger staff to do a sweeping attack on those. So I don't know. I would just say just try some different stuff. Don't stick with just one. Try a couple. I mean, I have a kind of a base sword I like a lot, but I'm trying to level about 5 or 6 weapons just to try something new, and then they're really fun.
I've got like 3 plus 10 weapons at this point. But the butcher knife carried me through most of the game. That was my favorite.
Cool.
That's one thing that I noticed in Bloodborne, just on a quick note about the weapons, that you basically had to pick your weapon and stick with it. Yeah. In the DLC reviews I read, when the DLC came out, everyone's like, yeah, there's 6 new weapons, but you might get to see one of them if you really focus on it, which, I'm the loot whore. I want to see it all.
Yeah. For Bloodborne, I didn't like the weapons as much. Like, the weapons were awesome, but it did take a long time to upgrade. And unless you're the kind of person that wants to just sit there and grind through levels like tons and tons of times, or you're going to be helping someone else like defeat bosses for hours and hours upon end, I didn't want to spend that much time to upgrade a weapon, so I stuck with some. So yeah, in the DLC, it's like, sweet, the new bow. By the time you got it, I didn't have enough Titanite or whatever the stuff to upgrade it with, so I never really got to use it. Like, if I replayed the game and I started with the bow, that would be fun. But
I wish that they had the secondary weapon modes, though, like they had in Bloodborne in this game.
That was really cool. Yeah, I
thought that was a neat mechanic.
For a cool gameplay moment, Mark and I were in Farron's Keep in the swamp, and there's these 2 enemies that are like, I don't know, are they brothers or something, Mark? They look like they would be in the story.
I'm not sure, but
there's these 2 soldiers.
With the scimitar and then the one with the club.
Yeah, and Mark was like, oh, we should be careful. We don't want to aggro them if we can avoid it, because there's also an AI that's going to spawn in here. So let's just see if we can get through this area without messing with that. But they saw us, they started rushing towards us, and the AI spawned in and came towards us, the invader. And then so we were starting to fight him, and I think we were doing okay. But then Mark got killed. I think it was just like an unlucky hit or something. And Mark went down, and so he was like, all right, well, I'm going to run back to you, like try to stay alive. So I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to kill all 3 of these guys. So I just started dodging. And they were coming very, very fast. Like, because the 2 soldiers were just whirling the whole time. Like they do their real fast spinning attacks. And you're in the swamp, so it's really hard to dodge because you're slow the whole time. So I'm dodging and rolling, and the AI guy keeps dancing in with this stupid mushroom bandage hat thing. And he's attacking me.
John's always putting that one on.
But I kept dodging, and then I kept like hitting at them whenever I could. And I think it was probably only a minute before Mark was back, but it felt way longer. But the entire time I was just white knuckle dodging back and forth. And I worked the AI guy down to almost dead. He was 1 hit from dead. He Estused, and then they killed me. Like they caught me and got me. But that was really fun because it was really, really fast, and I was kind of stuck in a, not, I guess, for most people that would be a winnable situation. For me, that wasn't a very winnable situation, so I just twirled around until they got me. But I definitely feel and appreciate Bloodborne's influence on some of the enemies and locations, kind of that old eroded Victorian art style. I think Bloodborne has my favorite art style out of the whole series.
Oh, so good.
And I really like the parts that are bled over, because like I know you guys complained about Dark Souls 2, that a lot of the enemies are just humanoid. Like the bosses are humans of various sizes, and a lot of the enemies were humans of various sizes. And I definitely see the difference in this game, and there's a lot of really interesting enemies, and fighting them. This is, I think, where Joel tends to disagree with me a bit, and he knows a lot more about Dark Souls, but it still feels like the combat is very, very rudimentary. That doesn't mean being good at it is simple, because it's not, and I'm not good at it, as we all know, but I would like to see a little more variation in how you can fight people. Because it still just feels a little bit too much like dodge, 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 hit, block, dodge, 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 move away, to Estus and let your stamina refill, hop back in, do a couple hits, keep dodging around. And I know it's not necessarily a Souls series thing to have like actual combos or things like that, but I would like to maybe learn new moves as you go through the game. And new abilities.
I think PvP is way more complex than the PvE, because like
Definitely.
when there are some invaders, like they'll whip out these spells and they'll alternate between that and their weapons, and they'll F you up.
And I think one of the other things is there's not many enemies that force you to use the shield. What do you call it when you like deflect their shield and then you can stab them, right?
Parrying.
Okay.
Yeah, parrying.
Yeah.
There we go. Like if you start practicing parrying, it really is so much fun, because like you walk down a corridor, you don't have to keep rolling and rolling away. Wait for the mother effer to attack, hit the shield, and then just stab him, and you just feel like a badass. But because if you mess up, you're going to get screwed by the hit. So you do kind of like don't want to do it, but it's one of those things that does a lot of damage. So you kind of have to like figure out a way. Yeah, but I think that would be pretty cool though if there was a couple more button combos. But the weapon arts on I have this giant broadsword, right? If you hold the left trigger, it goes into the weapon art. He does like a dash forward, but then if you hit the right trigger at the right time, he like does this spin move afterward do it. So it almost has a little bit of a combo. You do like a first thrust and then a spin move and then slam down. So it kind of adds a little bit of that, but I know what you're talking about. I think that'd be cool. But I think the biggest part with Dark Souls is just making sure you feel in control of your character, that you can move as fast as you want. So it's kind of a little bit like a Counter-Strike.
Or as slow as you want.
Yeah, or as slow as you want. Yeah. But like, I totally get what you're saying with like, there's a lot of rolling and stuff. But I think part of the environment is, for me, is connected to the combat as much as just the combat. So it's not necessarily the enemies that, like, let's say you hit them and they block this, block that, and you tap a button or do whatever. It's more of, okay, let me run up on a roof. Oh crap, there's 6 of them around me. I can't just run and roll out. I got to attack 5 people to get out, or, there's more like traps and stuff. But
well, it's as complex as you want to make it, because there's a reason why you have 3 slots for your weapon and for your right hand and your left hand each. Because some people are going to like have maybe, some lighter, assuming your equip load can handle it, they're going to have some lighter weapons. They're going to have some heavier weapons that they're going to switch back and forth in between, because, one's going to drain the stamina a lot quicker. Maybe they'll finish with a heavy attack after, wearing someone down with like a Ujikatana or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of as complex as you want to make it. And of course, when you factor in all the miracles and, magic stuff and everything, it can get pretty deep. I just tend to focus on like a strength weapon and just hack away at everything, because I like to do that.
That's what I do in all games. I don't really play Magic much, just because it's just not interesting to me. So when I say like there's not a lot of complexity, there could be a ton going on in Magic that I don't know about, just because that's not my style. But like, so in Assassin's Creed, it was really cool at first how you can like flow between enemies in one unbroken stream of fighting, until you realize everyone's just dancing around you waiting for their turn to fight, and it's not that cool anymore. And then that's one thing I really liked about The Witcher, is you can do the same kind of flowing in between enemies, but it doesn't do it for you. You have to be able to switch your targeting and then bounce in their direction and keep swinging and stuff, and there's stamina and everything. So I felt like Witcher was like a natural, really awesome progression to that, and I felt the most badass when I was playing The Witcher with that combat style. And I almost wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of that with Dark Souls, where like instead of, it feels like there's more static attacks, being able to chain and flow stuff together, even if the attack works the same, just not feeling like you're just doing the same one or two hacking motions, and then you can switch to two-hand and do the same couple attacking motions. Not so much from a difficulty perspective, but just for feeling less gamey and feel more like you're progressing as a soldier or whatever you want to call yourself. I think that would be cool, and that would help my immersion a little bit.
I have a related story to both the difficulty and gameplay moments, actually. And speaking of different, combat styles, all the Souls games that I've played, including the chunk of Dark Souls 1 up until it broke horribly, I've always played the same basic character, which is, as Joel has suggested for me, just pick, the basic combat style, short swords or the axe in Bloodborne, keep it simple. But for the Dark Souls 3, I was kind of thinking, I've played all the games at least some at this point. I want to try something different. I'm okay with it being a little bit harder. So I picked Thief, my favorite class style for any game really,
because they don't call it looter. It's as close as he can get.
Ranged weapons, bow and arrow, sneak around in the shadows. In theory, my favorite kind of Skyrim character.
Until they add the RPG class, civil engineer, where you just get to run settlements and craft things. And
starts out with you getting your degree and the character creator.
When's the next Dark Souls 3?
I picked Thief, and what ended up happening was I couldn't just rely on the usual blocking and stabbing outside of just, the low-level skeleton encounters. I got to that first boss, and I couldn't do damage. I charged him, dodge. I was still playing kind of Bloodborne style, and I got my first hit, finally. The first time he killed me, I got 0 hits in before he killed me. He just wiped me off the map. Second time, I got a hit in, it did 19 damage with my dagger. I had a dagger, not a sword. And I lost all the souls from that starting area immediately. I would say that it took me 20 attempts to beat the first boss. I thought about going back and rolling a new character, but I was like, I feel like I'm just not connecting with the style of the character yet. I tried bow and arrow, which I will say I think Dark Souls 3 is still kind of weak on the ranged weapons, especially in the very beginning. I imagine that they're not meant for bosses either way. Bow and arrow, not helpful for that first boss.
Well, not the initial leveled up, one. That one's a fast boss.
And plus, the starting bow is the short bow. It's meant for just quick shots to help the fight. It's not for facing off against a boss. What finally clicked though was I did some blocking. But it kind of worked out that I was still doing a lot of the Bloodborne style rolling because, the Thief character, not a lot of health, but pretty fast, a good amount of stamina. And I discovered that if I would wait for him to do a power attack, I could dodge and roll behind him really fast, do a single power attack, and then this kind of flurry attack with the dagger. And instead of 19 damage for one hit, to its front, like I would do if I had just a short sword character, I wait for him to do an attack, I get a flurry attack in, I'm doing 145 damage per stamina bar emptying, now. So at that point, I do an attack run, fall back. Do an attack run, fall back. Playing as kind of a hit and run character like a Thief. And to my surprise, once that started rolling, he killed me a couple more times, but I was just practicing, trying to get the hang of the dagger, and then it goes prey vanquish. I was like, oh, whoops, I beat him by accident, just trying to figure out how to use the dagger to my, best of my ability. So yeah, actually, it was a rough roll in the beginning, but I'm liking the different style of the Thief. I've had a couple times where I've used the bow and arrow to aggro a character away from other enemies to fight them alone, and then as they're charging up the stairs or whatever, I'm doing a really cheap drop down attack or something to wear them down, and then dodging their power attacks, doing the quick flurry stabs with the daggers and whatnot. I've moved to a short sword now, but I think I'm going to keep the dagger close at hand. And just, me being me, the organizer, the sneaky shadows thief, I think my favorite moment as that class so far was I went through 5 different phantoms, summoning people in to help me get to the next boss, the second boss, which I still haven't beaten just yet, just haven't played enough. But I was just summoning all these phantoms. I got to one ledge, I looked down, giant night guy walking around like a fountain. Tons of dead soldiers everywhere. And I'm like, this does not seem like the kind of scenario where a thief just charges in. So I'm up there on the ledge. My phantom guy, he looks at me. I pull out my binoculars. I'm creeping, looking at everything. The guy is staring at me like, are we gonna go forward? Like, what are we doing? So I put the binoculars away. I look at him again. I pull the bow out. Giant guy down in the courtyard. Pew! Pew! It's like 20 damage an arrow, but I've got like 100 arrows. The guy watches me for like 30 seconds. Just the health bar is slowly eroding. The guy is like glitched. The night guy that I'm shooting is like glitched against the wall because he can't figure out how to get to me because I'm just up on the ledge, pewing away. Finally, the phantoms had enough. After about 30 seconds, he jumps down. I'm watching him fight the guy for me. The whole time I'm pewing away, 20 damage apiece. I get the kill as he fights him for like a minute down below. Oh, I'm like, I'm the thief. I'm fighting from the shadows. It's perfect.
Did he leave in rage?
No. He actually ended up going ahead of me because I kept using the binoculars to like look through doors. Like, what was ahead? He got tired of waiting. I don't even know where he died because at some point he was just so far ahead of me that I just saw.
It doesn't matter. He means nothing to me. All that matters is
he was
progress.
still in your game, just beating it for you right now.
Mark knows what that feels like.
Yeah, at some point the guy just like left me behind and just died somewhere. I just summoned number 5.
Another one. So we'll segue from that right into the difficulty. So we know how difficult the beginning was for Dave, but what do you guys think about how hard is Dark Souls? Because that's kind of the thing that everyone wants to talk about with Dark Souls is it's so hard.
It's
its crowning achievement. So what do you guys think?
The parts where the screen goes black and my GPU crashes about 30 to 40 times playing the game, that's really tough. And that's my least favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's affecting a very tiny minority of people, which unfortunately includes Mark. But there's the official drivers have an issue with a very overall the game's launch appears to be super stable and most people are very happy, but there are some people who are not having a good time. But other difficulty, Mark, what do you think about the game when it's working? I mean, you already beat it, so obviously you were able to soldier on somehow.
I think it's just, like I've said, I know all the tricks. I know when I'm being baited into an area where there's going to be an ambush. I know I see the raised little parts of the floor where it's going to trigger a trap. I think I only accidentally triggered a trap one time, and I think it was when I was playing with you, Jeremiah, and I think it actually may have hit you. I don't remember. But yeah, I know all of Frum's tricks at this point. I was actually, at the beginning, I was thinking it was going to be pretty tough because you come up on that one dude on the rooftop who transforms and that giant demon thing pops out. I actually wish there was more of that because I thought, wow, that's a really, if enemies are going to be doing this all through the game, this is going to be actually a pretty big challenge because that thing is pretty nuts for an early area enemy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think one of my small complaints is that there's not enough of that. There should be more enemies doing the weird transformations and stuff like that. The bosses all have, different phases and everything, and that's cool, but I wish the lower level enemies all had some neat stuff, some neat surprises like that all throughout the game. But overall, this is probably maybe second to Demon Souls is the easiest game of the series for me, I think. Even the first Dark Souls, I never thought was that hard. I used to play an actual NES with NES games. Those are hard. Mm-hmm. This is a modern game. It's not that hard. I figured out what even in Dark Souls 1, within the first hour, I was running everywhere with my shield raised up at all times, constantly trying to bait enemies out into one-on-one fights. I'm not amazing at the game. I was doing some invasions for the last couple of nights, and I've won a couple of them, but I've been killed by a lot of people.
Mark, I was gonna tag on, you're talking about the difficulty. I think it's not as hard as Bloodborne. I think because Bloodborne was just so fast immediately. Although for me,
it was
towards
all
the end of
offense.
Bloodborne, towards the end of Bloodborne, it was much easier, honestly, than the start. The start was pretty fun and difficult because it was kind of relearning kind of a very different kind of mechanic, or slightly different.
Yeah.
But I think I would probably rank Dark Souls 3 as hard as 1 and 2 and as 1 and 2, honestly. But I would say it's hard because I've played 1, 2, Bloodborne, and this. And there are fairly kind of similar games. I mean, like they have a similar style, they have similar weapons, you know what I mean? They have that kind of boss fight. So I would say the difficulty is the same, but it's easier for me now because I've played all of them and I can kind of see it. But I'd say for anyone going in, it's going to be just as hard as 1 or 2. Like outside of just the beginning areas, because Dark Souls 1 wasn't a hard game. It was hard to figure out what the hell am I supposed to do, because I see a boss, I don't know what to do. I didn't know I could upgrade my weapons. I didn't understand all that. So once I figured out, oh, you can do all that, the game was much easier. And the hard part was more figuring out, what should I do next? Where should I go? Where should I find a key? As opposed to the enemies are so ridiculously hard, I can't possibly beat this. But
yeah, and I was watching some people who aren't very good at Dark Souls play the first couple of areas the other night, and I was like, wow, this looks really tough. Because they weren't using their shield. They actually were used to Bloodborne, and they were trying to play it like Bloodborne. Yeah. And I watched one guy try the I don't want to spoil it because I don't know if Dave's at it yet, but not the tutorial boss or the boss after that.
The answer's probably no.
The optional boss.
In the opening section?
It's there's a tree involved. I'll just say that.
Okay.
But I watched a guy try that for 2.5 hours. I was practicing guitar and I was just watching this guy over and over and over again. And that's an easy boss. That's a really easy boss. And he made it look really tough, though. I was like, wow. This is
and you know what I think is interesting is, like, if I could have my way for a Dark Souls game, not having to worry about the fact that they have to make money from people who don't play this and they love this series, you know, like it's their own wife. But Bloodborne, the DLC, was probably my favorite part of Bloodborne because you walk through the DLC. The same for Dark Souls 1 DLC. You walk through the effing door, immediately got your ass handed to you. I mean, like a second, it was like, hey, welcome to the DLC. Shit! Like the guy, like the first small guy was just destroying you.
Dude,
and for me,
the hunter, where he like slow walks like up to the stairs, and you're like, oh, it's another hunter. He's like pulls his pistol out, draws his sword, and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? And then he like lunges 40 feet and just double stabs you. You're like, welcome to the DLC.
Oh, and then you think, oh wow, I'm glad I finally took out that guy. And then after you die again, and you realize, oh shit, he respawns. These are the main enemies.
Yeah, exactly.
These are the filler enemies.
So for like, since I've played so much, I wouldn't mind it being on insane kick your ass level, you know, of difficulty. But I think it's at a very good difficulty for a very high quality game.
The joy is the exploration for me, like finding a new area. Like once the name pops up and I'm in a new area, like that's what I enjoy more than the challenge at this point.
Yep.
I think this is the easiest one. Now, granted, I mean, like you said, the more of them you play, the easier they get. But I think this is the easiest one. But for the reason I've said numerous times, I don't mind hard games at all. But most of the issues I've had with the Souls series has been the non-gameplay related things that are difficult, like the summoning being absolute garbage, and the system being totally obtuse and not working, or the camera getting stuck on things and you getting ganked by enemies, like when you can't see what's going on, or just. To
that
me,
last
it feels
one's
like
an action game problem in general.
It is, but I felt like it was very,
feels
very
worse
prevalent
in these games because they can gang up on you so quickly.
And Bloodborne, I felt it the worst. Bloodborne to me was the most frustrating. Like every new section I found, every new enemy I thought was cool. I thought all that was really cool, but the actual experience of trying to slog through the game for me was so frustrating because it felt like the game didn't want me to play it. Like it wanted to prevent me from playing it. And I don't feel that with Dark Souls 3, and I don't think I've gotten magically better, that much better since then, because I quit playing Bloodborne and then didn't play anything for almost a year. Hold on, I'm not done. I didn't play anything for almost a year, and then I picked up Dark Souls 3, and immediately it just felt a lot more polished, and those rough edges didn't feel like they were there. Like the first night, the summoning just worked, so I wasn't frustrated half the time running around because like we could actually just hop in together and then go fight the enemies. And like, so a lot of that stuff just was a lot more polished. I've gotten the camera hung up on something and gotten ganked once so far. After like 8 hours of gameplay, I've only been frustrated by that once. The rest of the time, it feels like, there's less things in the world for the camera to get caught on when you're panning around. Like they've smoothed those edges out. Not like in Bloodborne, it felt like there were a lot of right angles and it was easy to like dodge or something that clip one and it stop you. And then you get stun locked and then you can't move while the enemies just beat you to death. And it feels like they've smoothed it out. It's changes of a tiny few percentages at a time, but it feels a lot more fair now. So when I die, these times now, it's felt like I'm dying because I'm learning the boss or I'm trying to figure out this enemy or something. And it feels like I'm dying way less to what I feel is stupid crap that shouldn't be happening. So I feel more like I'm dying because of my fault now and a lot less because of frustrating gameplay decisions. And part of it is I have gotten a little bit better at the game, but I also think the gameplay in this is a lot more polished.
Joel,
and because of that,
I have not heard one
to...
outcry of bad game design yet.
That's great.
I mean, ask Mark. I'm not frustrated, am I? Like,
No.
This is
That's great. I mean, I've been secretly talking with Mark, seeing how things are going, keeping tabs. Well, because I love the series and I want you to love it too. Okay.
That's the only reason I got that part of Bloodborne. I was like, Joel, be disappointed.
No, I know.
And finally, I was like, I don't care anymore.
Here's something I think that you are enjoying the game even more. I do think it's an absolutely
because I stuck with it just
way
a little
more
bit longer.
No,
and it clicked.
because it's way more polished. Obviously, summoning co-op immediately. I was pissed with Bloodborne because that took away co-op time with John for 30 or 40 hours. I almost beat the damn game before the co-op actually worked.
Yeah.
I'm still pissed about that because I'm like, yes, I mean, I might replay the game again, but like Bloodborne wasn't my favorite of all the series because I like re-exploring the other ones. But I'm like, that felt a little bit stolen from me because I like that. I like that experience of co-oping with people. But if it's effing frustrating, no, it's not fun. But I would say this would just be interesting if you ever do go back to trying Dark Souls 1 or Bloodborne, if you would immediately feel like you're way more in control now. Because the reason why is you went through the hell nightmare of Bloodborne, right? And you kind of had to relearn not just game mechanics, but I'm saying like, oh yeah, how to use items, or this item does that, or this fire torch opens this, or this key does this. Now, starting afresh on Dark Souls 3, you're walking around immediately going, I need to make sure I collect everything. I should probably look at this item. I should maybe take a few seconds longer to look at this door. Things like that you realize, oh yeah, that's really important that maybe you missed in the start of Bloodborne that, added to frustration by the time you got to the point where I could handle it, but the game had already kind of shoveled you underground.
Here's a fun fact, Joel. Jeremiah discovered the night before last, I think it was, that you could look at an item description.
I didn't know there were item descriptions.
Yeah, I mean, and again, the buttons are there, but I didn't know about it either. So for Dark Souls 1,
the UI is still, it's the same basic UI they've been using since Dark Souls, and it's like, it's not amazing. Like it's there, but it could be better.
Be still so much better. But again, that's why Dark Souls 1 was so hard for me. It was not the fighting enemies. It was, I had this key the whole time. I could have walked up the door, put the ring on, and then opened it. I ran around the whole thing. But now that I know, hey, check your freaking items. Check what the rock you just picked up does. It might say, hey, this rock goes into this place by this such and such door. It's like, oh, now I get it. So I'd be curious, if you ever give it a shot again down the road, if it's like, oh wow, this feels so much easier now. Just because you're like expecting it now. So I don't know.
Well, Mark, do you still own Bloodborne?
It's the only PS4 game I have, and have ever had apart from the Killzone one that I sold.
Well, I might go back to it at some point then. If I could play with Mark, maybe I'll buy Mark a PS Plus card.
Summoning does work insanely well now. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what level you are. So we can have 3 people rocking and rolling. Yep.
Oh my god!
If you use a password.
Yep. If you put the password, it works with anybody.
For the DLC boss, I beat it as my last boss, second to last boss of the game, right before Dark Souls 3 launched, and me, Joel, and John had to summon probably like 9 times because John and Joel kept dying in dumb ways trying to help me out. But the summoning worked every time, so like it was just a matter of like a minute or two, and we were back in fighting. It was perfect. And of course, John was like twice my level. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like whereas in Dark Souls 2, I feel like Mark carried me for a lot of that game. I don't know, he didn't even like his character
Get
that
carried,
much.
Germ.
But for this one, I don't feel like Mark is carrying me that much. Like he's telling me cool things about the world that, I might not know or stuff. Like he knows more about Dark Souls than me. And honestly, I don't mind that I'm missing out on some of that on my own because
Yeah, sure.
I don't care about a lot of the high fantasy, learn all about the world and stuff. It's just, to me, that type of story is not interesting. So I wouldn't probably be learning about most of it anyway. I'm there to hack and slash at stuff. It's the same thing like in Ninja Gaiden. I don't care what the story is. In God of War, I don't really care what the story is. So I was just there to beat up stuff. And I feel like this time Mark is carrying me a lot less. Although I guess
I hang back and it's actually tough to do, but sometimes I just run around while I watch you hack and slash at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Because I mean, the same thing with the story, Jeremiah. Like, I really don't care too much what is going on. I guess the part of the story of Dark Souls games that appeals to me is John and I, we like walk into this cathedral and you're just like, what the hell is this for? What the hell is this for? You know, like I like more of the shock value that the stories bring necessarily than the actual quality of the story. Like, it's amazing how many things are really connected. Like, they do a good job if you could figure it out. But for me, it's kind of like, you mean there's these dudes like worshiping some creepy rock and you walk up to them and like, oh, they're not attacking me. Like, oh, that's cool. Worms from above. You know, I like that where it's kind of like, oh, then you find out the worms are part of some weird culture.
But to me, it still feels like a world that's been patched together for a game. It doesn't feel like a cohesive, immersive, lore accurate universe. Even if they've tied stuff together. If you watch some of the lore
videos, it's nuts. It's actually kind of mind blowing.
I'm sure they've connected stuff because it's their world. They can do whatever they want behind, they can connect it all however they want just by dropping hints places and stuff. But it doesn't feel like a put together world like, say, the world of The Witcher does, or like a lot of other more in your face story driven games are more obviously story driven. And I'm not trying to compare.
I mean, if you check out some of the lore, like it's not easy to follow, but I would say it's just as deep easily. I mean, it's crazy Japanese kind of.
Because deep is really just a function of how many people do you want to devote to working on that part of the project. Like, it can be as deep as you have time and money to make it, but I don't think it's that compelling. I don't think the story and the world really pull you in. I think the areas are really cool. Like, wow, this is a tree that's on fire. This is the fat old lady who's singing weird songs at you, or the maggot skeletons that are throwing up on you. Like, there's lots of really cool stuff. But I'm not compelled to like, man, I want to know what their deal is. I'm like, nah, I want to kill them. Like, it's that's my motivation.
I think that lady is deep and compelling.
I just want to help you.
Now, what do you guys think about the visuals, the graphics, the art style, and the graphics themselves?
Go ahead, Mark.
I think they suck. No, I think when my game is running and not crashing, it all looks very nice. Everything is all smooth and not framey. Like, the only time it gets framey is every once in a while when I pick up an item, and I think it may just be exclusive to, I think it's a 700 series cards that people have been having problems with. I actually just reinstalled again last night, went back to another older driver that someone recommended. And after the patch, it seems to be working fine, no crashes. But now I don't have I have everything set higher because I had set stuff to low because I was afraid of crashing for most of the game. But it's looking even better now. But yeah, the art style that got carried over from Bloodborne, that becomes even more apparent to me in the later parts of the game. I love all of the look of the environments. I don't think there's one in the last half of the game that like I'm not really excited to go through again with Jeremiah. It absolutely. I honestly think that if the first third of the game, even though it's the challenge and everything isn't quite there for me, if the first third of the game had areas that I liked as much as the last 2/3, it would be my favorite one, I think. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of cool references to the earlier games, especially Dark Souls 1 and a little bit of there's actually quite a big Demon Souls 1 as well. But those to me are really nice because they don't feel like just rehashing stuff just for the sake of it. It's recontextualized in this game to the point where it feels fresh still, which is really cool. But yeah, everything I think looks really nice, and like you said, like even on that front, I think it's the most polished because it looks a lot like Bloodborne, but with a nice frame rate for me.
Nice. I think it again looks like Bloodborne. A lot of people complain that it doesn't look quite as fancy as it should, but I'm okay with it because it runs on a wide range of hardware and it looks fine. Like it's not an incredible PC port, but 60 FPS works pretty well. The game runs pretty well. Like there's things I don't like that it does visually, but it's all very minor, and overall, like I'd rather have a game that runs well than a game that pushes the edges of what graphics are capable of doing. Because I still think it looks good. It makes me wish we could get a Bloodborne port. So like I play Bloodborne like with a good frame rate and like 60 FPS, anti-aliasing, like none of the blocky shadows and stuff. Like the art design in Bloodborne is so good. I want to see it like as the artist made it, I feel like the artist had to compromise so much just to put the game out. I feel like that's a game we're going to get a really good HD version of, maybe on the PS4.
It's going to be like seeing the director's cut of Batman v Superman. Full vision.
So Joel and Dave, what do you guys think about the visuals?
I'm loving it. You definitely can see a lot of cool stuff that they learned
this week.
Really, Joel?
Joel giggles.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. GameStop. No, I think one of the visuals I think people could probably say it doesn't lack, but maybe doesn't look as good as Bloodborne is. One of the reasons why I like Dark Souls 3 a lot more than Bloodborne, but I like it more than Bloodborne is you have a lot more varied environments, in light, more so for lighting. Like Bloodborne has a lot of varied environments actually, like as you go through the game, like there's swamps and this and that and everything, but it was always dark almost a lot of the time, except for a few areas, it just felt always like at sunset, the whole game kind of feeling. That I think daylight doesn't work as well on their Dark Souls engine or Bloodborne engine as the moody moonlight kind of fog and stuff.
The DLC, really well. That kind of did it for me though.
That's true, but I would say, there's a couple areas in Dark Souls 3 that I can see, like when it's just a sunny day, like it's maybe not as visually stunning as a Bloodborne area with fog rolling across. Like, you know what I mean? Like that has a little bit more of a cinematic nature to it than just regular daylight. But for me, I'm loving it. I like the idea that you can go from a broad daylight area, like, oh, cool shacks, go down to elevator. It's a nightmare. Like, I like that. I like the differences. So, I'm fine with it. It looks
There's
awesome.
A completely optional area that, and to me, it's mind blowing that it's optional because it is like hands down right off the bat one of the coolest environments in any of these games. That kind of you get the best of both worlds. Like there's kind of like some changes and stuff like that as you go through it. That's pretty neat. But
have I gotten to the area yet where my mind's blown yet?
I don't know.
Okay, the area I just got to is there's a long bridge.
Is it where you go on? I think you're actually where Jeremiah is.
I'm at the same place as you then.
You go on the bridge and maybe once you start walking, something may appear.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, you're getting closer.
That's about as far as I've got. Okay, cool. I figure that was an awesome moment. Like honestly, coming around, I was like, whoa, this looks awesome. So, I figured that's not it yet. So, okay, cool.
Graphically, you can really see the Bloodborne influences in some of the micro detail. It's not quite as micro detailed as Bloodborne, which might be why the frame rate is pretty solid, even on launch on PS4. What I'm, I think, the most happy about compared to Dark Souls 2 is that it looks like a modern game. I really felt like Dark Souls 2, even at launch, felt like a much older game, and even as cool as the game was, and while it had certain vistas and stuff that were really neat, overall the game just felt really, really dated. I haven't felt that in Dark Souls 3. Really, I think the only legacy stuff that still bothers me graphically with Dark Souls 3 is I still cannot stand your player character's idle pose. And I think it's like this because there's so many different variations of like your overall body shape you can do. So like you could be like a huge hulking guy or like super skinny. And they kind of have to have average animations to deal with that. But I hate how when your player is standing there, he stands like this, like with his arms and legs kind of spread a little bit and just like idling. It looks like a fighting game character from like 10 years ago, and it just really bothers me because every Dark Souls game has that exact same idle pose, and it's never changed. And I think it's because you can, change your character. Like I said, they have to kind of deal with all variables, but it looks so wonky. But man, the environments are so much more detailed. And the games have always had the vistas, but now you have stuff like all the craggy, like rock details and stuff like that I really notice. And in a Dave moment in the first area, I get comments on stuff like my Fallout immersion mods videos. People like, why do you care about Pip-Boy shadows? Pip-Boy shadows don't matter. Why do you care about extra brass coming from the gun? You'll never notice that. And I'm like, but I noticed it immediately. First area of Dark Souls 3, I take 2 steps in the swamp and I go, the water doesn't react. And like it just instantly bothered me. And hopefully I haven't ruined the water for you guys in Dark Souls 3.
It's probably explained in the lore.
Okay. In that case, carry on.
Physics do not exist in this area of the woods.
It's so weird because like you look at the water like at an angle, you're like, that water looks pretty good. And then you touch it and you're like, oh, it's just like kind of stuck. It just really bothered me because it looked good, but then it just doesn't react whatsoever. But like I said, overall, Dark Souls 3 feels like a very modern game, whereas Dark Souls 2 at launch did not. And I'm very happy with how it looks so far in the first 2 areas I've been to.
All right, and we have an email from Mantrack. He writes into casualshenanigans@gmail.com, just like you can, and says, well, now that I've requested a refund on H1Z1, I'm anxiously awaiting for my balance to finish pending so I can buy Dark Souls 3. I did have a few questions, though. What are you guys' specs? I'm running a GTX 970 and a 4590 quad-core, and I'm a bit worried about how I'll be able to run it. I've heard that some people have had FPS issues on PC, and since I'm running a 1440 Hz or a 144 Hz monitor, I'd like to get as close as possible to that mark. Do you think I'll be able to get at least decent FPS at medium-high settings? Thanks, guys. Love the show. Unfortunately, Mantrack, the game is locked at 60 FPS no matter what, so until people figure out how to break that open if it's possible, and DS Fix has come out for all the other Dark Souls games, so once DS Fix releases, which is a third-party mod that lets you do a lot more things, maybe you'll be able to uncap the frame rate, but you will be locked at 60, but providing your monitor is 1080p, you should be able to lock at 60 on the highest settings, absolutely no problem. For reference, I'm running a 4790K and a 980 Ti. I'm playing at 4K, 45 FPS, medium, I think. Although you'll see, we're about to watch a Potato Masher video. The graphics levels mean almost nothing in this game, the amount that they adjust. Medium doesn't really mean anything. It gets you like an extra 5% in performance. But I'm having no issues. And Mark, you're maxed at 60 at 1080p, right?
Yes, and it is flattering that he wanted to get close to me. I don't know him, but you don't have to write into Casual Shenanigans to get close to that mark. Contact me directly.
Oh.
And wasn't that a lot of build-up for very little payoff?
Something Mark's
Remember,
used
that's
to.
a money-back guaranteed, folks. If Dark Souls doesn't run at 60 FPS, Jeremiah will personally fly to your house and fix your PC with a brand new video card.
Probably
Yeah,
would.
Mark's running what, a 4650K? What do you have? 4670K?
That's it.
And a 780 Ti, and you're running maxed out at 60. So
Yeah.
but we are going to see now how the Potato Masher handles the game. We haven't had a Potato Masher video on the podcast in a while, if anyone's curious. It's just because as I've taken it over as more of my thing, it was too many videos. I'm making too many of them to put them on the podcast every single week. And we wanted to differentiate it a little bit from Casual Shenanigans. It always was started by Casual Shenanigans. I always pimp out Casual Shenanigans in the videos, but we wanted to stop having it on the podcast so often. But for any games that we're doing like a review of, if I have a Potato Masher video, we'll also play it during the podcast so you guys can see. And it's relevant to what this guy says in regards to performance and seeing how the game runs on relatively lower end hardware. So do you
Can
guys
you
all
throw
have
up a
that queued
time
up?
code to where we can just skip if we don't want to watch it?
Why, yes, I can.
All right. Does everyone have the video?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Start it in 3, 2, 1, go. Today, we'll be taking a look at Dark Souls 3 on the PS4 and the Potato Masher. If this is the first video you've seen of mine, the Potato Masher is a $375 PC custom built in 2014 and designed to compete with the PS4 for the rest of its life cycle. The goal is not to pick on consoles, but to show that PC gaming can be just as good or better for the same money. The project was started by the Casual Shenanigans Gaming podcast, so go check us out using the link on screen. You can support the Potato Masher project and my channel by tossing me a few bucks on Patreon to help me test new games quicker and better. You can also see all Potato Masher reviews a few days early. Lastly, this video was recorded and uploaded at 60 FPS, so you probably want to switch to that if your browser supports it. Alright, let's get to it. Some people have complained that Dark Souls 3 looks dated and isn't as pretty or graphically advanced as a 2016 game should be. I think Bloodborne's art style was a little more appealing, but Dark Souls 3 runs decently well on both platforms and looks fine in my opinion. It's also probably the best running From Software game. Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne were plagued by low frame rates and frame timing issues. Steady frame times are just as important as a steady frame rate if you want smooth and fluid gameplay. Digital Foundry's excellent analysis of Dark Souls 3 revealed frequent and annoying frame timing issues and small frame rate drops on the PS4, with frame times occasionally almost doubling what they should be. I've linked their video in the description if you'd like to see for yourself, and I highly recommend checking them out. Because of this, my first goal was to see how smooth and steady the Potato Masher could run the game, and I was not disappointed. At very high settings, the Potato Masher was rock solid at 30 FPS, with a consistent 33.3 millisecond frame time. I've added a frame time counter next to the frame rate in the upper left hand corner of the Potato Masher's footage so you can see how it does. I condensed about 5 minutes of gameplay into a few seconds, and in that time you can see the frame timing hits 35 milliseconds twice. That's not a perceptible difference, and it's significantly better than the PS4. The PS4 runs the game much smoother than Bloodborne, so hats off to the developers, and recent patches have made it even better. Still, there was a noticeable difference when I played both versions back to back. The Potato Masher felt like it was running at a slightly higher frame rate due to the stable frame times. I made sure to test Farron's Keep, as people keep comparing its performance drops to Blighttown in the original Dark Souls. The Potato Masher had plenty of overhead performance and it still ran that section fine. Slightly better than the PS4, and very stable. That was one of the only noticeable differences, however. More than most other recent releases, Dark Souls 3 has almost total parity across both platforms. The Potato Masher enjoyed slightly better anisotropic filtering and shadow resolution, but both weren't very noticeable during gameplay. Even the PC version's ambient occlusion looked almost identical in most scenarios. I would have liked to see better anti-aliasing options on the PC, as the aliasing was very noticeable and fairly distracting. You can partially solve this by running the game at a higher than native resolution. Here, the Potato Masher is using NVIDIA's Dynamic Super Resolution to run at about 2100 by 1183 resolution, still at very high settings. The aliasing is much better, as you can see, and the resolution bump is small enough that the Potato Masher runs at about the same. Of course, that was at 30 FPS, and I wanted to run the game at 60. Dark Souls 3 is a brutal hack-and-slash game that requires quick reflexes and agility. Running it at 30 FPS is fine, but if you can push the frame rate to 60, the game feels much more fluid and responsive. Unfortunately, as a console port, Dark Souls 3 does not have many graphics options to turn down to increase performance. It has the standard ones you'd expect, but they don't even make that much of a difference. Here's the game running with an unlocked frame rate at very high settings, and here it is again running at very low settings. The frame rate is barely higher, and the game doesn't look significantly worse. There's also no obvious hardware bottleneck that's affecting the frame rates. That made hitting a consistent 60 FPS at 1080p impossible. However, any bump in frame rate can be helpful, and when I used Riva Tuner Statistics Server to manually lock the game at 45 FPS, it worked pretty well in high settings. There were a few small drops to the low 40s, but the bump above 30 FPS was still very noticeable and the frame times were great. I lowered the settings to medium and I locked the game at 50. It also worked very well, still with occasional drops of 2 or 3 FPS. I was still looking for a stable 60, so I lowered the settings to 900p, medium, and then I was able to lock it at 60. Still with an occasional light frame drop, the game's visuals held up surprisingly well and the frame timing never wavered. Here, the Potato Masher is on the left at 900p, and the PS4 is on the right at 1080p. YouTube compression makes it a little bit harder to tell the difference, but 60 FPS feels more important than 1080p in this scenario. Of course, the beauty of the PC is that you can make that decision for yourself based on your preferences. At 1440p and medium settings, the aliasing issues were completely gone and the game looked quite good. I obviously had to lock the frame rate to 30 FPS, but it was stable. Because 1440p is about 70% more pixels than 1080p, the lack of extensive graphics options meant that higher frame rates were pretty hard to come by. When I dropped the settings to very low and unlocked the frame rate, it ranged from the high 30s all the way to 60. However, a stable 45 or 60 FPS was not possible at any graphic settings. 4K also did not work at all. It ran worse than Bloodborne at launch, even if only by a few frames. Dark Souls 3 is an interesting game. It looks good, but not amazing. It runs well, but it's not a miracle of optimization or scalability on any platform. It's a fun, decent-looking game that is definitely worth playing. If you care about frame rates at all for fighting games, the PC is the obvious platform choice. And with visual parity, higher frame rates, and virtually spotless frame timing, the Potato Masher easily bagged another victory. If you enjoyed this video, check out the original build video or any of the other Potato Masher videos linked on screen. You can also follow me on Twitter, check out the Casual Shenanigans Gaming podcast, or support the project on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. So, the game does run pretty well. Now, if you watch this on the Casual Shenanigans channel, if you want to see it in much better quality, because it's going to be a lot more compressed, you should go check it out on my channel, because it's going to be harder to pick apart some of the finer graphical details. Just like the version that these guys just watched was like a third of the size that got uploaded to YouTube or bitrate. But
how does that Potato Masher run Minecraft?
Well, if you would like to bump me up to that $1,000 per video Patreon level, you can find out. Until then, screw you all. Screw you all. Thank you very much for supporting the project. All right, it's news time.
What Patreon level is the screw you all tier?
Yeah, he's touring himself out for free.
Okay.
Hard time.
What? Hard time?
Horror time. He said
horror time. Oh, good.
Horror
time. Great. I'm glad we have a horror time song now. So the PS4K or the PS4 4K now has a new codename, Neo, which goes along with the VR's codename, which was Morpheus. But we have some actual information now. There's been a lot of very credible leaks because Sony's been sending out, apparently, they've been sending out like docs to developers saying this is what's going to be in the PS4 4K, stuff to kind of just prep them so that they're ready to hit the ground running. So like where the original PS4 has 8 of it's a octo-core AMD processor. It's called the Jaguar architecture. 8 cores running at 1.6 gigahertz. They will now be clocked up to 2.1 gigahertz. The GPU is going to be a new GPU. Digital Foundry dove into this. The specs of the GPU do not perfectly match any AMD GPUs currently on the market. They're very close to the AMD R9 380, which is about 15 to 20% faster than what's currently in the PS4. But it could be AMD's new architecture that's not out yet, because it also very, very closely matches what we know about that so far, the very little bit of information that we know for sure. But in any case, the memory is also running at a higher bandwidth, so the memory's been clocked up to a higher speed, and the GPU clock is at a slightly higher speed. So what does this all mean? Sony says that they will be requiring developers to serve up 1080p at a minimum, which I think again, this is pretty much a confirmation. This is going to be a fairly minor bump overall. This should mean stuff like Battlefront, where it was 900p, should definitely be 1080p. Stuff that's a wavering under 30 FPS should be a locked 30. You know, stuff like that. I don't think it's going to be revolutionize anything, even if they have some sort of 4K upscaling. I don't think there's any way anything other than maybe some indie games might run at 4K because those are super easy to run. But
Yeah.
I think this is going to play 4K Blu-rays. It's going to do 4K Netflix streaming. It's going to support the new output standards, HDMI 2.2, stuff like that. And it will be a little more stable for games, but I think that's about it. I don't think it's going to do anything.
I have a
that.
theory. I have a theory about what they're doing, and I've kind of been warming up to it over the past 2 days, just kind of reading more about it. If it's like, okay, you guys all know I didn't like the iPhone 6 because just the size. But let's take out the size quality of it, right? Let's say the iPhone 6 was the same size as the phone size I have now, the 5S, right?
Okay.
And then the 6 Plus was that size, the big size, right? If it was just essentially, because they were essentially the same exact phones, the 6 and the 6 Plus are have the exact same basic specs, other than one has a much bigger display. There's really not too much different about it, you know? And so I think if they go, you know what, instead of trying to let the PS4 last for however many years, let's say it's 5 years, right? Like just let it run its course and then we do a fresh upgrade. I wonder if they're doing something where they're just allowing slow upgrades while keeping all of them working together just fine, as if the PS4 was an iPhone 6 and you had the 6 Plus. There's almost not much difference on like, hey, yeah, I have a bigger TV. I want to have a slight optimized, a little bit better graphics or whatever, right? If it's just that and they just keep going, stepping up just slowly, it could be an easy way for PlayStation to kind of keep up with PC games, if that makes sense. Like, obviously, the PS4 is not like, ask any PC people, just like you guys, it's not running 6K graphics or something like that. But I'd say
it's not going to run 4K. There's no way. It's not going to be.
No, it's not. But I think what they could do is if they do this step and they do another one in the next 2 years, and they just do slow steps, they could just keep the PlayStation around as PlayStation, and it almost seems like it's an easier choice than just running out and maybe putting yourself together a PC,
But I think it's interesting that you're warming up to that idea, but that's one of your least favorite things about having a gaming PC, and that's the people.
Well, the least thing is upgrading stuff. This is one box switching out.
This is buying an entirely new unit that's slightly faster, as opposed to swapping out one component to make it faster.
No. Well, it's not just that. It's also drivers and everything else that comes with PC. It's not just swapping out drivers. But I'm saying it's just, if they just do 2 swaps every 2 or 3 years, I can see what they're trying to do, where they can go, hey, instead of trying to make it last for 5 or 6 years and then get behind again on PC graphics and have to do a big bump again, they could just slowly increment like mobile phones.
My question
would be totally fine with if it lasts for the next, honestly, 7 years. I'd totally fine. I don't care.
They could make it more like a fleshlight where you can just swap out the inserts. The inserts are still pretty expensive, but at least the case is the same.
I hope none of this is a thing. Oh gosh.
But
you'll have to research.
I don't want to research.
Even if they did that, Joel, then when do they move to the next gen of PlayStation hardware? Because you can't just increment, like with the x86 platform that all the consoles are on. They could theoretically do that, but at what point are developers going to need an entirely new set of hardware, a new processor architecture to work on or something? Like, they can't do that forever. They might be able to do this a couple times, but
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, the same as when should a PC developer stop developing for an older PC hardware? Huh?
Well, that's the thing, is they don't have to, because
I know. Well, yeah, I mean, I understand that, but with PlayStation, if they dabbled a little bit in that, in the sense of, okay, we have options like this, like basically cell phones. Think of the cell phone world. It sounds like they're trying to go that direction of how you get used to, like, every 2 or 3 years you could swap it out, upgrade if you want. If you don't, you're just playing the game on the lower end. But graphics, just like PC, you can right now. You can play PC games on a 10-year-old PC.
It's more complicated than that, though, because with the PlayStation, they are limited to a certain set of hardware features, and what that lets them do with software, they kind of have to make a bet and say, okay, this is all that we'll need to work with for the next couple next couple years of this generation. So that is kind of a guarantee that whatever they come up with, it's going to use your existing hardware. But if they make too many leaps, they're going to want to introduce new features, and some of the stuff that PlayStation isn't good at, that it's not possible for it to do, they're not really going to be able to fix some of that without having new hardware, like actually new hardware, not revised hardware, which is why the PS4 was such a quantum leap over the PS3 and better in so many ways. So my concern is they're going to want to, like, by doing upgrades, they're not cannibalizing the lower end of the market with all the vanilla PS4s, But I think they're going to be kind of setting a precedent where I can't see how the vanilla versions or the older versions aren't going to start getting the short end of the stick, just like what happens with cell phones, and which is one of my least favorite things with cell phones. Like my wife's iPhone 4S worked great through iOS 5 or 6, whichever one came out with it. 6, great. 7, great. 8, like, destroyed it. Like, where with cell phones, once they reach a certain software revision, it comes out, it's almost exactly about 2 years, which is kind of, weird how that times out. They get way, way slower because they're like, well, we want to do all this cool stuff, but the old hardware can't keep up with it. So it still works on the old hardware, but if you want the good experience, you kind of need to step up to the newer one. And that's why I don't really want consoles to move in that direction, because that is, in my opinion, pretty anti-consumer.
It sucks that I think they're going, like, I don't know what they're going to say that would be really like, like, oh, that's really cool, because for me, like, Joy has a PS4 as well. Like, if I upgrade mine, if hers works perfectly fine with, like, she would not care. Like, if I'm playing Division at 40 FPS or something and she's playing at 30, she would not give a crap, not 1 second, But for me, going like, all right, well, can I play this game? Will it work with hers? Like, if there's ever that issue, that would kind of suck because I would probably have to switch them out, because I like that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, if they would go to, because I wish they would slow down the cell phone market. I hate how many new phones have to come out so often. It's like, oh, I gotta get this. Like I'm honestly going to be fine with this size for a long time. This phone does not have the what is it called? I want to say pinch and peek, but that's not the word. It's the Force Touch on the 6 Plus, so you can like push a little bit harder. That's a really cool. I think that's going to be a really neat feature with stuff down the road. My phone won't have that, so I'll be left for the next 2.5, maybe 3 years with this phone. I won't be able to use that feature. So yeah, I am behind on features I just can't simply use. But for me, it's like I don't care. It's not a big deal. I'll live without it. Like I don't know I'm missing anything right now, so whatever. But,
correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't really been paying attention, but to me, this really strikes me as a sort of situation where the parents think, does my kid have enough wisdom? Is he old enough to realize that his real grandma was put in a home because she has dementia and we hired a new one to play her on Craigslist? Because we do remember software and hardware developers. And that hurts. Old grandma had Rocky Road ice cream.
Why? You couldn't use like the turtle analogy or something?
I'm
I'm
unfamiliar
gonna
with
drop this
that.
podcast to warn you guys that Mark is batshit crazy.
Oh, Joel's saying that. Joel, we got our next piece of mail is specifically in regards to your ear raping last week in your 90 seconds. You're like, get under the covers with me. Take your clothes off. Close your eyes. We're gonna think about stuff.
Forceful. I was
That brings back memories of first grandma.
Now you never told us to take off our clothes, but everything else you did say. Anyway, all right, Dave, what's your news item?
Just one last note on the PS Neo. I think it's interesting because what most of the rumors we have on that is like the developer like new standards, right? Mm-hmm. That's how we're getting these leaks. It is just funny to see how like sky high like the 2012 2013 E3's like expectations were compared to like version 2.0's like developer standards.
It sounds like this is the version that people were teasing originally, like every game 1080p 60 FPS, it'll do all these things, and then it comes out and it's like, oh, well, it turns out when you buy a computer for $400 with everything included, there's a few corners you gotta cut. It's not magic. And then this feels like it's kind of like, all right, all that stuff we talked about, a lot more of it is now possible. Here's the Neo.
For my actual news, though, Mark, are you ready for this? Are you ready? Hoops are coming.
Yes,
to Rocket League. It's coming, Mark.
Oh!
Finally, we'll be able to stay up. We're going to be playing Rocket League for like 3 hours, then a couple hours of Snow Day, then a couple hours of of Hoops mode. Eventually, we're just not going to ever stop playing Rocket League because there's going to be like 10 different modes. You have to play them all before you quit playing. This is going to be how it works.
Every night.
Hoops is coming to Rocket League, free update. It's a basketball style mode where you have to like get the ball up into a hoop that's suspended off the ground. So like ricochet shots are the best way to score. And you know how these guys do their updates. The details are insane. the course is an actual like hardwood floor, and the tires squeak.
It squeaks
when you like land. Like the tires squeak and squeal. It's gonna be amazing. Are you okay, Jeremiah?
I just saw Mark's chat comment.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. Dave, I like how you're trying to describe basketball like, hey guys, there's a sport where you use a ball and you threw it to yourself. I'm like, yeah, Dave, there's I mean, I guess people who listen to our podcast probably maybe don't play sports as much. Go outside, guys. There's the sun.
I just assume, Joel, that most people aren't familiar with how you play basketball with a rocket-powered car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little unusual. There's also going to be some NBA DLC that comes along with it, which will be paid $2, and you get the flags of all the NBA teams. Most exciting for me, though. Most exciting for Dave is the upcoming Witcher 3 medallion antenna, releasing for free for Rocket League. There's no word on how you'll get it. I would pay money for that, though. Let me just throw it out there. I would immediately pay money for a Witcher 3 medallion for Rocket League. And on unusual VR news this week, this caught me totally by surprise. Dean Hall's Rocketworks studio has released their first game. They've got a few in development that you've seen at E3s and stuff. It's a Vive exclusive, not quite tower defense, but like base defense VR game called Out of Ammo. I hate to use the Minecraft description because it's so overused, but it's a blocky world, and you build a base, and then you shoot the bad guys that are attacking the base. It reminds me of Minecraft combined with like the plastic army men kind of scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's Dean Hall Studio. DayZ is still in early access. This is now early access. It's his first released game in early access with his new studio, and the DayZ reputation has definitely followed him.
And the game he announced last year is still no closer to being out as far as the public's aware.
There's still no word on like if they even have a window for when that's going to be finished. That's still like just, you know, we're working on this space game. But Out of Ammo, interestingly enough, the reason I wanted to talk about it, just mention it briefly, is because he is getting so much DayZ related flack over this.
Which is totally fair, I think. Not the mean things people are saying, but the skepticism is totally fair. I don't want to say he's setting himself up to be a Peter Molyneux, but his career track is kind of seeming like Peter Molyneux so far. Like, come out of the gate blazing super amazing stuff, and then the vague promises and the under-delivering and the abandoning projects to move on to other projects.
Here's why I don't think that's the case, and that's because this was not only, there were no promises with this game. This game wasn't even announced. It just released. It was just here's this game. I mean, it's early access. It's not finished yet, but it's kind of like how Minecraft was in early access. The core of the game's there. Like from here on out, it's just additions to it. It's not like DayZ where, you know, 2 years in they're rewriting the game engine. Like it's there. You can play it. But what really interested me was the disparity between the internet's reaction to Dean Hall's new game and then the reaction to people who have actually played it. Apparently it's a lot of just really casual VR fun. Like everywhere that I saw a like preview of this game or like an early access review, impressions were generally good. There'd be tons of Dean Hall anger in the comments, and someone's like, "Oh, I've got one of these vibes, and it's actually it's a lot of fun." And then like everyone's just hating on it. But yeah, new early access game Out of Ammo from Rocketworks. Apparently it's fun. I won't know for a long time because VR is expensive. But
if they launched a Witcher VR exclusive game right now, Dave would already have it pre-ordered.
I would sell my body for the money.
I mean, Dave, can't you like just play The Witcher? Are there mods yet to play The Witcher 3 in VR, not in first person, but in third person?
Probably a porn parody that's in VR.
That's true of most things at this point.
There's no VR mod that I'm aware of, but there is a first person mod actually. And all of that, like the flowing sword combat and all, is also first person. I mean, it looks dizzying. I don't know.
Joel, what's your news item?
Dark Souls related. This Dark Souls 3 has been selling really well. It's their fastest selling Souls game yet, and I think it's their fastest selling game for the developer, for Namco Bandai. So I was like, that's awesome. It's great that the game's the publisher. It's great. It's great that the game's selling really well. And I hope, there's been talk that, Miyazaki says that this game is the last one of the Dark Souls series, but I hope it will not be the last of the type of genre of these games. So hopefully it will do well, that it will kind of go, all right, maybe we should do another one,
Make a sci-fi one.
Yeah, a lot of people were sci-fi. A lot of people said even, I think I would love I don't know. There's so many genres I think they could be really awesome with it. But yeah, glad it's selling well.
I don't know if anyone was going to talk about it, but have you heard anything about the board game Kickstarter?
Oh yeah. I forgot. There's a Dark Souls game. I think I sent it to Dave. I think I did. But it went on Kickstarter. Within 3 minutes, it was already funded. We were trying to raise $75,000, and it's now at like $600,000. So it's doing really well. It looks awesome.
Oh,
I'll definitely pick up a copy.
Already.
Oh, it did?
First day.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, I'll definitely be getting a copy. I probably can't get it now. It's a little expensive, but I think it's like $75. But it looks like a lot of fun, actually. It's co-op. I was joking. I was like, it's gonna come with the same summoning mechanics. Like you try to summon a friend, I was like, sorry, you can't summon. And then I said in the post, and James goes, he's like, when you get invaded, some random guy from your neighborhood smashes your door down. Hey there, no, this game's so real.
You have the app on your phone, and it tells you when people in your area are playing the board game. They've played the card. You hop in your car. You're driving towards your house fast as they can. This is gonna be so fun. They'll be so surprised. Now, as you guys know, GameStop, in their infinite wisdom, has launched a full publishing division. They've signed Ready at Dawn, Insomniac, Frozen Byte, Tequila Works, and other developers. Ready at Dawn and Insomniac are major studios. And their new publishing division is called Game Trust, which is a very Comcast-like name.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
But they want to launch between 5 and 10 games every year. So I think this is pretty smart. They say they basically want to be there if people need money help, if they need to get something off the ground, something like that. And presumably, GameStop knows that their existence as a retail location is in severe threat by every year that goes past, and they need to start diversifying now, which is why I think they do a lot of business with iPhones and iPods now. And some shops are starting to get more into collectibles, like collectible figurines and posters and statues and stuff from games. And so maybe actually publishing their own games could be another way to bring in some revenue and diversify before physical games completely go away. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's honestly a great move. I mean,
it's smart.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't done that already. I bet they probably done maybe some small stuff where they don't own it fully, but I bet they probably invested in other stuff. But that's a smart move, because I mean, the one thing, if GameStops or game places go away completely, I mean, you are really completely left with what? Maybe going to Best Buy, but having a dedicated gaming shop, I think is a good idea. Whether or not you like GameStop, I mean, not every GameStop is a horrible place. I live in a great...
It's really bad. That's really the way you gotta,
I know.
Talk about it. Guys,
I've honestly never had a bad experience in a GameStop. And you'll have kind of the younger douchebags that think they know what they're talking about, and you talking about a game. I'm like,
you're like, I'm an old nerd. I know so much more.
I'm like, I'm on a podcast talking about games. Shut the hell up. That's exactly what I say. First line. But
slap that Casual Shenanigans business card down on the desk. I'm an elite customer.
It's the Ron Swanson thing of going into a Lowe's or Home Depot. I know more than you.
Yeah.
You're like, power to this player. This guy.
I was about to say, that power you guys are giving to players? I'm that player.
I'm that player.
Well, I guess
that player? It's true.
What I was going to say is that with VR coming out, we do need brick and mortar shops for people to actually understand this stuff. You know what I mean? For selling it.
I just need your house. You're going to get it day one. I just don't understand it there.
Sure.
Yeah. You need people with the kind of cash I'm rolling in over here. I'm going to bed. My sheets are made out of cash.
Doesn't sound comfortable at all.
No, it is.
It feels so scratchy, but it's so rich.
When I'm hungry, I gotta rip off part of the sheet and
Joel, are you going
I'm
to announce
cold.
on this podcast that now you're expanding Norman into 4 sequels?
shooting back to back.
Not back to back, simultaneously. 4 cameras pointing in 4 directions, 4 scenes happening simultaneously. Are you good enough?
Camera gangbang.
All right. Next news item. The Xbox 360 has been in production for 10 years, and as of today, it is in
Has
production
tenure.
no more. Ugh. I think what's even more impressive, the PlayStation 2 is being made until like 2 years ago. But the Xbox 360 has been through like 3 major hardware revisions or 3 different hardware versions. All the services will still work. They've sold, 100 million units or something. And it's pretty cool. 78 billion hours played, 25 billion hours spent in apps over the lifetime of the Xbox 360. So
I always thought if they could somehow get their Xbox 360 down to like a size of a external hard drive, that'd be so cool. Even if it came out, honestly, 2 years from now, just being like, hey, here you go, little Xbox, like just plug it anywhere.
The
You know what I mean?
PS2 Slim was almost that. The PS2
Yeah, the
Slim was
PS2
2
Slim is
DVD cases.
But I'm like, clicking on the link to look at the Xbox 360, the latest version, it's a really slick looking console. And I'm
It
like,
is, yeah.
man, that'd be awesome if you get it really small. But I mean, probably wouldn't sell a lot. But now that the technology of it's probably using for a cell phone quality now.
Mhm. If they take out all the DVR features, I bet they can make the Xbox One way smaller too. So, all right.
Everybody using
Last
that extra HDMI slot.
last news item. Intel and they've announced a major restructuring that is cutting 12,000 jobs, which is 11% of the company's workforce. Which is interesting because they had $2.2 billion of revenue growth last year. Intel is doing great, but they're cutting a lot of people. And they're doing this because they feel that the consumer PC market parts of it have been in decline, and they feel like it's in decline, and they just want to restructure and become more profitable. Which they did before, like 6 years ago, and then they discovered that the high-end PC market was actually growing, and it has been growing ever since. The gaming PC market, the high-end workstation market, is steadily growing. Because as much as people talk about the death of the desktop computer, when it comes time to do real work like heavy lifting, there's no substitute for a bunch of servers in a farm just pumping out a ton of heat. There's no substitute for a real desktop computer doing video rendering.
Yeah.
Like there's no, it's like
that
in cars.
middle grade PC is starting to go, I think, the
definitely.
wayside though.
Definitely it is, but it's kind of like with the internet, 95% of the internet is not accessible from a search engine because it's people's back-end login pages, and it's the parts of the internet that aren't searchable. It's like it's most of the internet you interact with you can't get to right from a search engine straight to that page. Whereas computing's a little bit like that too. Computing is a lot bigger than walking into Best Buy and seeing a couple computers that are for sale. There's like heavy server farms, heavy workstation stuff. Like Microsoft barely cares about the consumer market. They give away Windows 10 on the consumer market because the business end is where they're really making their money. So on that side of things, I don't think desktops are going away anytime soon. But Intel feels like this side of the market, they're gonna be moving away from a little bit more. That doesn't mean that that's not really bad news for us. It sucks for the 12,000 people who are losing their jobs, especially since Intel is extremely profitable and doesn't have to cut the jobs. That makes it suck even more. But
Question: do you think
I just jumped back in, but I think we should build a wall.
A wall around Intel to keep the employees in.
the morale takes a hit you can't recover from, but they'll still be here.
Speaking of morale, how much do you think this is going to snowball any other companies? I mean, if Intel is pulling back from that, how many other companies or investors on other companies going, how is this going to look? You know what I mean?
When you
Not
said
at all.
speaking of morale, I thought you were going to say that there was a home improvement spinoff coming.
Is that a line from Home Improvement? I have no idea.
Mark, that was horrible. That was just lame.
Joel
That was
his
just
head.
for you. That was stupid.
That's just
Oh, Joel, are you just now learning how his jokes work? You're like, that's not even funny.
Some of them are okay. I love you, Mark.
Ringing endorsement. No, I don't think so, Joel, because Intel has done this before. They've said it's the doom of the PC market, blah, blah, blah. And then like a year and a half after they did that, they hired a bunch of people and put out Devil's Canyon, which was like their most advanced chipset yet. And like they've done a bunch of stuff. So no, I think this is right now the market isn't growing in the area they want. So they're cutting people out of that area and refocusing on other markets. I don't think this means anything. As long as there's still a demand and computing is not getting smaller, like overall computing's only going to get bigger. People will still be making high-end stuff because there's always going to be people who need the fastest stuff available. And people thought, that's like, well, like last time Intel did it, they came out with their like the Atom processor and everything because an Atom processor is fast enough to load a web page, fast enough to do what most people want. But it turns out most people actually are willing to pay a little bit more for better performance. And that's why that stuff never really exploded. So I think it's going to be the same thing. They'll come out with something more advanced in a couple years. They'll hire more people if people buy the product. I don't think it means anything. All right. It is now time for one more piece of mail. Quantum of Infinity wrote into casualshenanigans@gmail.com, just like you can, and said, today I have a little rant or something like that about 90 seconds with Joel from the last episode. What the hell was that? I was half awake, half asleep in my daily commute to work. All of a sudden, I hear Joel with his story, and I was thinking to myself, am I on acid, or is there something wrong with my brain? But after the story ended, I thought that I have to ask Joel about his dealer. If you could share this information, who is your contact? So I may try the same stuff you're getting, because this has to be some strong stuff if you have stories like that. After that, I think Dave should also make some kind of joy shed in his settlements with Joel's enchantment medicines. So there needs to be a joy shed with Joel's enchantments.
You flip a switch and that just plays over loudspeakers on a loop.
Thanks to Joel, I will never listen to the podcast again when I'm not fully awake. I am scared to do that again.
I feel so proud. Well, I mean, if you think every ASMR audio podcaster, YouTuber is on crack, then yes, I'll get in contact with my dealer. I don't even know. It's like binaural audio. It's basically stereo audio, okay. But it's just like whispering, like, "Hey guys." They just whisper really quietly, and I mean, I guess some people like really enjoy that quiet whisper because it supposedly gives you the tingles, like the hair standing on the back of your like a neck, like you know what I'm talking about, like goose feather. Goosebumps? Goose feathers?
No.
It gives you those goose feathers in the back of your neck.
I heard, Joel, there's one of those channels that is literally just the sound. People talking, whispering into the microphones, rustling their beards for you. Slowly into the microphone.
Dude, I've had someone just rustling newspapers, just literally going, shh.
I listened to that.
Just opening. And I was just
used
like,
to be,
with my coffee in the morning.
Jeremiah's channel whenever he'd play at night.
Hi guys, we're playing some DayZ tonight.
Joel, you need to be quiet.
Now it is time for 90 seconds with Joel. A part of the podcast where Joel talks about whatever he wants for 90 seconds. Did you not have one this week?
No, well, okay. No, I actually did. I forgot to write on there. I got my phone today, right? Or I guess, sorry, Wednesday. And I was upgrading to the iPhone SE. And I decided to go with the rose gold one. I thought it looked kind of cool. It's a little bit more pink than I was hoping for. But you know what? It's done. It's a done deal. I'll have to dip it in chocolate so people can't tell. It's like whatever. I'm just always hiding it. No, I like it. But anyways, we were at AT&T store and we're getting our phones, and naturally the guy handed the pink phone to Joy. Then here's hers, and I grabbed it. I was like, no, this is mine. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, monsieur. It was a great lad, but it was really funny doing that. And then because I told everyone in the office I was getting the rose gold, they're like, "No, you're not." And then I was like, "You got the rose gold." I'm like, "Yes, I did, and I'm fabulous."
And now you're gonna stick with that phone for 2-3 years, right, Joel? Is that right?
I've made a huge mistake.
Because first Joel's like, "Oh, this new iPhone is too big. This one doesn't have the battery life I want. This one's a little too pink." Strangely, Joel's buying a new iPhone every 6 months. What a coincidence! My wallet's awfully full this month.
It's now time for What Are You Playing This Week? Part of the show where we talk about what we're playing. Mark, would you like to go first?
Oh man, this is a tough one. Oh, I think I'm gonna pop Dark Souls 3
Grogbar.
maybe. Grogbar. Yeah, so, yeah. Dark Souls 3 until Hoops comes out.
Cool. Joel, what about you?
Dark Souls 3, of course. I've been playing a little bit of Fallout, working on my settlement, trying to outdo Dave. The amount of lore, Dave, you have no idea.
Surrender.
I'll never
Save your
surrender.
people, Joel. Save your people.
Dave, you're gonna somehow mod the ability to like co-op into my game and destroy my settlement. Like, how did you do this?
You're giving your tour.
Yeah, Dark Souls.
My NPC shows up.
And then I'm also playing Dirt with Jeremiah, and that's been a lot of fun.
Mhm.
I think that's it. Yep.
Yeah, our tournament thing last night was so much fun. It was like the 2 stages together took about 16 minutes total, and the way the stages work is it adds up your time from both. Joel and I finished like 1 second apart.
Literally 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
and like
It's gonna be
over a
close.
16-minute thing. So
We have
I've
2
won
races
2.
left.
Joel's won 1. I should not have won last night because I just didn't have time this week to properly practice. I wasn't ready going into it. But Joel, how many times did you roll your car?
Oh, like the second
Yeah.
race, I rolled it like 8 times or something, and then I just kept pulling back. And I was watching the video. I'm like way behind you, and then I'm like catching up really fast. Roll, and then you get ahead. Catch up. I was just going for broke on that second part.
It's a ton of fun. We're really liking it. And actually, if anybody would be interested in doing a Casual Shenanigans Dirt Rally League, because we don't have to all play at the same time, it's super easy
That's a
to add a
great
bunch
idea.
of people into it. Write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com or tweet at us if you're interested. And if there's some interest, we'll put one together because it would be super
you're-
easy to do one.
If you're an actual rally car race, no, get out.
If you have a wheel, maybe.
Let us use it.
Play anything else, Joel?
We played a little bit of Division the other day. I was
did.
able to peel myself away
It's pretty fun.
to play with Joy and you guys too.
I think
I
I'm
was
gonna
having,
cap out.
I was having fun with Enter the Gungeon until Dark Souls 3 came out, like literally right after that.
Oh, what do you think about Enter the Gungeon? I hear good things.
It's a lot of fun, and that's a game that's actually challenging.
Is it a side scroller? Is it a roguelike?
Yeah, but it's top down bullet helly.
Okay.
It's like 200 plus different kinds of guns.
That's
it's-
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Ooh.
it's kind of got like a Binding of Isaac sort of thing going where you get like different passive items that stack up on top of each other that can have interesting effects on the bullets and yeah, like randomly generated floors and everything. It's pretty cool.
Sweet. Yeah, Joel and Dave and I played the Division, and I think like, yeah, I think I'm gonna cap out around 30 hours probably, unless the DLC changes a bunch of stuff. I'm still enjoying the game. You know, it's not really gonna be the replacement for DayZ that it would have been nice if it was. But I'm having fun, and I think I'll definitely have gotten my money's worth out of it. I think unfortunately, just like last year, this is one of those years where like I'm gonna stop playing it, not because I hate the game or I'm tired of the game, but because there's just too much else coming out.
Oh yeah,
I'm trying to finish Tomb Raider and make some good progress in Dirt Rally and a few other things so that like I can play Uncharted 4 and then be done with that by the time the next Witcher expansion comes out. Like already the rest of this year, I just know I'm going to be jumping from thing to thing to thing. So I'm probably going to stop playing the Division when some of that stuff comes out just because of what it is. But
Speaking of
enjoying it.
Tomb Raider, you should see what's going on in the chat about grandmas right now.
no, you shouldn't. You're really
You
missing
mentioned
something out if you
rating
don't watch
them
live.
too.
Oh my gosh, Shane. Oh, you're a sick person. All right, Dave, what have you been playing besides Division and Grogbar and Dark Souls?
You mentioned Witcher, and now it just kind of clicked. Like, if Blood and Wine, the Witcher 3 expansion pack, which is still my most anticipated game of 2016, if that comes out in June, I need to get as far as possible in Dark Souls before that comes out. Because I'll finish Dark Souls like in like Christmas break this year once Blood and Wine comes out.
Dave,
Did
you
you
take
buy-
forever
did you-
to beat any game too.
Did you buy a physical copy of Dark Souls 3?
No, I bought it digital this time. I knew better.
Oh, so you can't return it and then get it on PC and play with me, your slow friend.
Is that the label you're choosing?
If he gets on his PC, Jeremiah, he's playing Fallout or doing settlement stuff, so that's not even gonna happen.
Speaking of which, this week Dave is playing the Fallout 4 Workshop and the Arma 3 Eden Editor, along with the Division, Rocket League.
He's having fun, Joel. Not everybody has fun just buying games on multiple platforms at the same time. Other people enjoy doing other things, like playing around in the Eden Editor, making a base for people to spawn in, collect their gear, and leave. But it's lore accurate.
But what if something else happens to the base later? Ooh, there's a mystery afoot. I'm trying to think. I think that was basically it for what I've played this week. Yeah, I'm really closely following the DayZ the every 2 week status updates on the renderer. They're actually doing like detailed technical, like these are the blockers that our programmers resolved this week. Like last week they were working on alpha to coverage and MSAA support for the new renderer. But I'm really closely following DayZ because I'm really excited to jump back into it. The new renderer looks fantastic, and just briefly, Joel, the Arma 3 update that came out today is the first change to how Arma weapon switching works since like the original Operation Flashpoint. Remember how in Arma and DayZ you like pull out your weapon and he does like the put on shoulder, and like the whole time you're running forward?
Yeah.
Completely new animations with hotkeys, no scrolling. Dude, it doesn't feel like an Arma
Say
DayZ
what?
anything. It feels,
it's not a sim anymore now. It's ruined.
Honestly, it is. I'm like, this feels like really weird, but I'm really impressed. The animations look great, but just like it's one of those things that you wouldn't put on a bullet point in the back of a box, like new weapon switching animations and hotkeys. But just like in the game, it feels so different. It really is a huge
Those
difference.
things really make a huge difference, Dave. Like I've been asking for years. You gotta insert bullet with the F key, hold the mouse, slide it over, put the VR gear, look down, clean the muzzle.
Actually, in Dean Hall's defense game, Joel, the VR one, if you're doing like the sniper rifle, some of the rounds, if your magazine goes empty, you can like chamber individual rounds, but the game actually tracks the round as you're like putting it into the gun. And Dean discovered that you can do like trick shots, like trick reloading. Like you can open the bolt, hold your gun, and like toss the round and like catch it with the gun, and then slam the bolt by like jerking the gun. He's like, this is pretty sweet.
That's cool.
That's kind of my thing. Anyway, yeah, Arma updates are looking fantastic.
All right. Anyone have anything else to talk about before we go?
Negative.
Sweet. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. As always, if you want to be a part of the show, you can write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com or tweet at casualshenaniga. You can go to our website, casualshenanigans.com, or our Facebook or YouTube pages if you want to see previous episodes or episodes of Casual Shenanigans Tech, where Dave and I answer your tech questions. A monster episode just dropped. I think we answered like 7 or 8 different things. Yeah, I know. You don't like it, Joel. No one cares.
No, I wasn't.
No. We knew.
It was the way you said it.
We knew. Shut up.
I was thinking like
Dropped a monster episode on you.
It's the way you said
Yo,
it.
some
Like,
sick filth just dropped when we talk about computer parts mostly.
dropping them records left and right, yo. Wicka. That's how you DJ.
You trying to be young is endlessly entertaining. You're the oldest 30-year-old I've ever met. I mean that in the nicest way possible, and I love
Sick
you very
jams,
much.
yo.
Are you sure?
Sick
Are you
jams.
sure?
That's right. I don't think that was even cool when your parents were teenagers.
Joel's tone deaf comedy jams.
At work, I said rigmarole. I was like, oh, not this rigmarole again. I was like, wait, what? He's like, are you really using those words?
And then Joel put on his top hat and headed down to the draft. Our boys over in France need some help. Those trenches won't dig themselves. And that's the rigmarole.
Well, anyway, I don't really think I've got anything else to compete with that. So until next time, we will see you all later. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. We hit 1,000 subscribers this past week on our YouTube channel, and we did a record month in March for both video and audio. So thank you to all the new people who are here listening to the show. We appreciate all of you. We hope you enjoy it. And until next time, I was trying to think if there was a grandma's joke. that'd be good.
Don't
I feel
drink
like
and
you
drive
died.
unless you're gonna go real fast. Because if you're gonna do it, you need to make sure it's gonna be fun and make it count.
And until next time, guys, get carried.